Thinking in English is not easy at first. When I started learning English, I always translated words in my head. This made me slow and frustrated. I wanted to speak fluently, but my mind was stuck in my native language. One day, my teacher told me something important. She said, "Stop translating. Try to see words as images." At first, I didn't understand what she meant. How could I stop translating? I had always used my native language to understand English, but I decided to follow her advice. I started with simple words. When I saw a dog, I didn't think of the word in my language. I just imagined a dog. This small change helped me a lot. Another important thing I did was using English in my daily life. I labeled objects in my house with English words. My mirror had a note that said, "Mirror." My table had a note that said, "Table." This way, I saw English words every day. I was training my brain to connect words with objects, not translations. I also started talking to myself in English. When I woke up, I thought, "I am getting out of bed." When I ate breakfast, I thought, "I am eating eggs." These simple sentences helped me think in English. I didn't need perfect grammar. I just needed to practice. Thinking in English is like building a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger it gets. At first, it feels strange, but over time, your brain starts to understand English naturally. I was excited to continue my journey. Chapter 2, Immersing Myself in English. To think in English, I needed to surround myself with a language. I changed the language on my phone to English. Every time I checked messages, I saw English words. It was difficult at first, but my brain slowly got used to it. I also started watching movies and TV shows in English without subtitles. At first, I didn't understand everything, but I focused on the words I knew. Listening was very important. I listened to English songs and repeated the lyrics. I also listened to podcasts and tried to understand the main ideas. The more I listened, the more my brain became familiar with English sounds. This helped me think in English faster. Reading in English also helped me a lot. I started with simple books and articles. When I saw a new word, I didn't translate it. Instead, I tried to understand its meaning from the context. This way, my brain started connecting words naturally. Another technique I used was describing my surroundings in English. If I was in the park, I thought, "The sky is blue, the trees are green, the wind is blowing." This simple habit made me more comfortable with English. Little by little, English became part of my daily life. The more I immersed myself in it, the easier it became to think in English. I felt like my brain was adapting to the language. Chapter 3, Speaking Without Fear. One of the biggest challenges was speaking without fear. I always worried about making mistakes, but I realized that if I wanted to think in English, I needed to speak more. I started practicing with myself in front of a mirror. I looked at my reflection and said, "Today is a great day. I will practice English." Then I decided to speak with real people. I joined online groups where people practiced English. At first, I felt nervous, but I reminded myself that making mistakes was part of learning. The more I spoke, the more confident I became. One trick that helped me was using simple sentences. Instead of trying to say long, complicated things, I use basic words. For example, instead of saying, "I had a great experience at the restaurant because the food was delicious," I said, "The food was very good. I liked it a lot." I also learned to think in phrases, not single words. Instead of thinking book and read, I thought, "I am reading a book." This helped me create sentences in my mind faster. Speaking every day made a big difference. The more I practiced, the less I needed to translate in my head. I was starting to think in English naturally. Chapter 4, Training My Brain. Thinking in English is like training a muscle. I had to be patient and practice every day. One method that helped me was writing my thoughts in English. Every night, I wrote about my day in a notebook. I didn't worry about grammar or spelling. I just wrote freely. I also practiced visualization. I imagined conversations in English before they happened. If I was going to the store, I thought, "What will I say to the cashier?" I planned my words in English before speaking. This made real conversations easier. Another helpful trick was using English for problem solving. If I had a question, I searched for the answer in English. For example, if I wanted to know how to cook pasta, I watched a video in English instead of my native language. I also used thinking aloud exercises. When I was alone, I spoke my thoughts in English. For example, if I was cooking, I said, "Now I am cutting the vegetables. I need to add salt." This helped my brain get used to forming sentences. Training my brain took time, but I started seeing results. My thoughts in English became faster and more natural. I was thinking in English without even realizing it. Chapter 5, A New Way of Thinking. One day, I realized something amazing. I was thinking in English without trying. I woke up and my first thought was, "What time is it?" Instead of translating from my native language, it felt natural and automatic, something I had never imagined possible when I first started learning. This small moment made me reflect on my progress. At the beginning, I had struggled with every sentence, but now my thoughts were forming smoothly. I finally understood that the key to thinking in English was not about knowing every word or speaking perfectly. It was about practice, patience, and consistency. I also discovered that thinking in English had changed the way I learned. Instead of memorizing long lists of vocabulary, I now understood words in context. When I heard a new word, I didn't translate it. I imagined its meaning, associated with situations, and used it in my thoughts. This way, words became part of my memory naturally. I no longer needed to force myself to remember them. I started enjoying the process of learning new expressions and playing with the language. It was exciting to see how my brain adapted. Another important lesson I learned was that mistakes were not my enemy. They were my teachers. Before, I used to be afraid of making errors, thinking that speaking incorrectly would make me look foolish. But now, I saw mistakes as necessary steps toward improvement. Every time I use a word incorrectly or struggle with grammar, I reminded myself that I was still learning. I stopped feeling embarrassed and started focusing on improving. This new mindset gave me confidence, and confidence helped me think in English even faster. Of course, there were still moments of frustration. Some days, I felt like I wasn't making progress. I still encountered words I didn't know, and sometimes I couldn't express my ideas as clearly as I wanted. But instead of feeling discouraged, I reminded myself how far I had come. Thinking in English was not about being perfect. It was about being consistent. I trusted the process, and I knew that every little effort added up over time. No matter how small, every improvement was a victory. Now, I don't just speak English. I think in English. I see the world through the language I worked so hard to learn. English is no longer just something I study. It's part of my life. It helps me connect with people, explore new ideas, and expand my opportunities. Learning to think in English was not just about language. It was about changing the way I see learning itself. And with this new way of thinking, I know I can achieve even more in the future. When I first realized I needed to improve my English, I felt both excited and overwhelmed. I had learned a few words in school, watched some movies with subtitles, and even tried listening to English music, but I couldn't speak fluently. My sentences felt broken, and I always hesitated when I tried to talk. I knew vocabulary, but I couldn't put my thoughts together quickly. People would ask me simple questions like, "How are you?" or "What do you do?" And I would freeze, trying to find the right words. I wanted to speak naturally, but I didn't know where to start. At first, I believed that grammar was the most important thing. I spent hours memorizing grammar rules, studying verb tenses, and reading textbooks. But the more I studied, the more I realized that I couldn't use any of it in real conversation. I could write yes, but I couldn't speak fluently. I would pause, think too much, and forget what I wanted to say. It was frustrating because I was working hard but not getting results. Something was missing, and I had to find out what it was. One day, I watched a video where someone said, "Fluency is not about knowing every rule. It's about using the language every day." That sentence changed everything for me. I began to understand that improving my English wasn't about being perfect. It was about practicing regularly, even if I made mistakes. I decided to take a new approach. Instead of focusing only on grammar, I would focus on listening, speaking, reading, and writing every single day. I wanted to live with English, not just study it. I made a simple plan. Each day, I would listen to English for 30 minutes, speak for 15 minutes, read something new, and write at least 5 sentences. It didn't sound like much, but it was consistent. I chose topics I enjoyed: music, travel, and personal stories. That made everything easier. I stopped worrying about sounding perfect and started to enjoy the process. Every time I listened or spoke, I felt like I was building a bridge to fluency, one brick at a time. After a few weeks, I started to see small changes. I understood conversations more easily. I could say simple sentences without thinking too hard. My confidence started to grow. I wasn't fluent yet, but I was finally moving in the right direction. I knew that with time, patience, and daily practice, my English would continue to improve. I had taken the first step, and that gave me the motivation to keep going. Chapter 2: Building Daily Habits. Creating daily habits was harder than I thought. At first, I was excited and full of energy, but after a few days, life started to get in the way. Some mornings I felt tired. Some nights I was busy, and there were days when I just didn't feel like studying. But I reminded myself of my goal: to speak English fluently. I didn't want to lose motivation. So I looked for ways to make the process easier and more enjoyable. I started using a calendar and marked every day I practiced. Seeing my progress visually gave me a sense of achievement and pushed me to continue. I realized that the key to fluency wasn't long study sessions. It was consistency. Even if I only practiced for 20 or 30 minutes a day, the important thing was not to skip days. I built my routine around small moments. I listened to English while cooking, practiced speaking when I walked alone, and read English blogs during lunch breaks. Slowly, English became part of my life, not just a subject I studied. I wasn't forcing myself anymore. I actually looked forward to it. Learning became natural, not stressful. To stay motivated, I chose materials that I truly liked. I started watching TV shows with subtitles, then watched them again without subtitles to test my understanding. I listened to podcasts about self-development and English learning. I found YouTubers who spoke clearly and shared useful tips. Their stories inspired me, and I started to feel like I wasn't alone. Many people around the world were learning English just like me, facing the same struggles and pushing through them. That gave me strength to keep going. I also discovered the importance of shadowing. It's a technique where you listen to someone speaking English and repeat exactly what they say right after them, copying their pronunciation and rhythm. At first, I felt silly doing it, but after a few days, I noticed that my pronunciation was improving. I wasn't just learning words. I was learning how to say them naturally. My mouth and brain started to get used to English sounds. It was like training muscles I had never used before. I kept repeating, practicing, and correcting myself. By the end of the second month, I was no longer afraid of English. I still made mistakes, but I didn't feel embarrassed anymore. I was making real progress. I could have short conversations, introduce myself clearly, and understand most of what people were saying in videos. I realized that learning a language is not about talent. It's about effort, mindset, and habits. I still had a long way to go, but I had built a strong foundation. Chapter 3: Speaking Without Fear. One of the biggest challenges I faced was speaking English with other people. I could read and listen, but when it came time to open my mouth, I felt nervous and insecure. My heart would beat fast, my hands would sweat, and sometimes I would forget even the simplest words. I knew I had to overcome this fear if I wanted to speak fluently. So I started looking for opportunities to speak, even if I felt scared. I joined a language exchange app and connected with people who were learning my native language. We helped each other, and that made it easier. In the beginning, I made a lot of mistakes. Sometimes I used the wrong words, or my sentences didn't make sense. But I quickly realized something important. Most people don't care about your mistakes. They care about communication. They listened patiently, helped me when I got stuck, and even encouraged me. Those conversations helped me gain confidence. I stopped worrying about being perfect and started focusing on expressing my ideas. Little by little, I started speaking more naturally and with less fear. To improve my fluency, I began talking to myself in English. I would describe what I was doing during the day, talk about my plans, or review what I had learned. This simple practice helped me think in English. Instead of translating from my native language, I started forming thoughts directly in English. It was a big change, and it made speaking easier. I also recorded myself and listened to recordings to find areas I could improve. Hearing my own voice in English was strange at first, but it helped me grow. Another great help was storytelling. I started telling simple stories about my life, things that happened at work, funny experiences with friends, or memories from childhood. I practiced these stories many times until I could tell them fluently. This gave me a group of ready-made sentences and phrases I could use in real conversations. It also helped me build my vocabulary in a more personal and emotional way. I wasn't just learning random words. I was learning the words that mattered to me. Over time, I noticed something amazing. The more I spoke, the more fluent I became. My words came faster, my sentences were smoother, and I started to use more natural expressions. I even started using phrasal verbs and idioms without thinking. My brain was adapting. Speaking English was no longer a stressful event. It was becoming a skill I could enjoy. I was proud of how far I had come, and I knew that the best was yet to come. Chapter 4: Listening and Thinking in English. Listening is a powerful skill, and I soon realized that improving my listening was key to becoming fluent. When I listened carefully, I picked up new words, learned natural sentence structures, and improved my pronunciation. I began listening to English every day, during breakfast on the bus, or while doing chores. At first, I didn't understand everything, but I didn't give up. I listened again and again until the sound started to make sense. Repetition was my friend. To get the most out of my listening practice, I chose content that was just a little above my level. If it was too easy, I didn't learn much. If it was too hard, I felt frustrated. But when it was slightly challenging, I learned quickly. I paused, rewound, and repeated sentences. I also used transcripts to read along as I listened. This helped me connect spoken and written English. Slowly, I started to understand more without needing subtitles. My ears were adjusting to language. One technique that helped me a lot was active listening. Instead of just hearing the sounds, I focus on every word, every phrase, and try to understand the meaning. I would write down new vocabulary and review it later. I also tried to predict what the speaker would say next. This made my brain more engaged and trained me to think in English. I wasn't just listening anymore. I was understanding and participating mentally in the conversation. As my listening improved, something magical happened. I started to think in English. It began with short phrases. I'm hungry, it's late, I should go now. Then it grew into full sentences and thoughts. I didn't have to translate everything in my head anymore. I could think directly in English, which made speaking much faster. My brain became used to English patterns, and I felt more connected to the language. It was like learning to swim. You stop thinking about the strokes and just move naturally. This shift changed everything. Thinking in English gave me freedom. I could speak faster, understand people better, and respond more naturally. I realized that fluency is not just about speaking quickly. It's about being comfortable inside the language. And the way to reach that comfort is through consistent listening, daily practice, and mental immersion. I felt closer to fluency than ever before, and I was ready to move forward with more confidence. Chapter 5: The Power of Reading and Writing. Reading was one of the most powerful tools that transformed my English. At first, I thought reading was just something people did to learn vocabulary, but I was wrong. The more I read, the more I understood how the language lives, how it flows, how sentences are structured, how ideas are developed, and how emotions are expressed. I started reading short stories, then moved to blog posts, then to full novels. Each page was like a classroom, and every paragraph taught me something new. I paid attention to how native speakers describe emotions, transitions between topics, and the natural way they express complex thoughts. Reading helped me feel the rhythm of English, which made me a better speaker as well. But I didn't just read passively. I became an active reader. I highlighted expressions I liked, wrote down unfamiliar words, and reread parts that felt important. More importantly, I began to imitate the writing style. I created my own sentences using the structures I had seen, like, I had no idea that, or, what surprised me the most was. This practice built a strong connection between what I read and how I expressed myself. And soon, I began to write every day. At first, it was just a few sentences about my day, my dreams, or my opinions. But with time, I started writing short stories, journal entries, and even essays. Writing gave me a chance to organize my thoughts in English and to see where I needed to improve. One major discovery was how writing allowed me to slow down my English thinking. While speaking required fast reactions, writing gave me space to reflect. I noticed my common grammar mistakes, repetitive words, and weak phrases. I could then correct them and rewrite better versions. This helped me become more conscious of how I form my sentences, which later improved my speaking too. The best part was that writing became a safe space. No pressure, no fear of judgment, just me and my thoughts in English. And when I shared some writings with native speakers, their feedback made me better. It was motivating to know I was being understood clearly. In time, reading and writing became my secret fluency boosters, while listening and speaking helped me interact with the world. Reading and writing helped me understand the soul of the language. I saw how English is used to persuade, to tell stories, to express feelings, and to teach. I noticed idioms, cultural references, and humor. I understood how language isn't just words. It's a way of thinking. This made me fall in love with English more deeply. I wasn't just a learner anymore. I was becoming a communicator, a thinker in English. That shift gave me purpose and joy. By the end of my 5th month, I had developed a solid base. I practiced daily, listened with intent, spoke without fear, and built my thoughts through reading and writing. I had created an English environment around me. English was no longer a foreign language. It was becoming my language. I knew I still had areas to work on, but the gap between where I was and where I wanted to be was shrinking. I had momentum, and that was more powerful than perfection. Every mistake became a lesson, and every day felt like one step closer to true fluency. Chapter 6, Dealing with Frustration and Self-Doubt. As much as I loved the progress I was making, I would be lying if I said the journey was easy every day. There were many moments when I felt stuck, frustrated, and even questioned if I could ever truly become fluent. Some days, I would listen to a podcast and barely understand anything. Other days, I would try to speak and suddenly forget words I had just studied. Those moments hurt. I felt disappointed in myself, as if all my work had meant nothing. I began to compare myself to others who spoke better or faster, and that comparison stole my motivation. I started to feel like I wasn't good enough. But through those emotional struggles, I learned one of the most valuable lessons in language learning. Progress is not linear. It goes up and down, fast and slow. There are breakthroughs and plateaus. The human brain doesn't learn perfectly. It learns through repetition, correction, rest, and time. I realized that just because I had a bad day didn't mean I was a bad learner. In fact, those hard days were proof that I was pushing myself beyond my comfort zone. And that's where real growth happens. I decided to be kind to myself, to celebrate small wins, and to accept that frustration was part of the process. To stay mentally strong, I started journaling about my journey. I wrote about what I learned, what frustrated me, and how I felt. I also wrote about why I started learning English in the first place. This reminded me of my purpose. I wanted to travel, to work internationally, to make friends around the world, and to understand cultures through their own voices. That dream became my fuel. I create affirmations like, I am improving every day, or My mistakes helped me grow and repeated them when I felt down. They might sound simple, but they gave me strength on days when my confidence was low. I also found support from others. I joined online communities of English learners and shared my challenges. I saw that I wasn't alone. Everyone faced doubts, and everyone needed encouragement sometimes. We helped each other by sharing tips, success stories, and failures. Sometimes just talking to someone who understood the struggle was enough to keep me going. I also started following language coaches and teachers online who talked about the mental side of language learning, not just the grammar. They reminded me that mindset is everything. Eventually, I learned how to turn frustration into fuel. Instead of seeing mistakes as failures, I saw them as information. Each forgotten word showed me what to review. Each confusing audio showed me where to improve. I started measuring success not by perfection, but by persistence. I knew that fluency wouldn't come overnight, but if I kept going, it would come. That deep belief gave me peace. It allowed me to enjoy the journey again, even when the path wasn't smooth. I stopped fighting with English, and instead, I became its partner. That mental shift changed everything. Chapter 7. Living the language every day. After months of steady practice, reflection, and emotional growth, something beautiful happened. English stopped feeling like a subject and started feeling like a lifestyle. I didn't need to remind myself to practice anymore. English had become part of my routine, part of my identity. I woke up and checked the weather in English. I talked to myself while getting dressed. I read the news, watched videos, and even dreamed in English. It wasn't just a goal anymore. It was how I lived. This immersion was not forced. It was natural, like switching to a new way of breathing. I created an environment around me where English was the default. I changed my phone and computer settings to English. I followed English-speaking creators online. I subscribed to newsletters, joined English discussion forums, and started following topics I cared about: technology, travel, psychology, all in English. This made learning feel effortless because I wasn't just studying, I was living through the language. Every article I read and every comment I posted strengthened my vocabulary and boosted my confidence. Even on lazy days, I was still surrounded by English. More than that, I started thinking about life in English. When I had deep thoughts, when I planned my week, when I asked myself questions, I used English words. This was the final and most powerful step. Thinking like a speaker, not a student. I stopped asking, am I saying this right? And started asking, what I want to say. I stopped judging my level, and I started trusting my voice. Fluency, I realized, is not about speaking fast or knowing every word. It's about having the freedom to express yourself without fear, with clarity and emotion. By now, I had also inspired others around me. Friends started asking how I improved so much. I told them it wasn't magic. It was commitment. It was falling in love with the process, not chasing shortcuts. I shared my story, my struggles, and my systems. And I felt proud, not because I had become perfect, but because I had grown. I had faced every barrier, fear, doubt, confusion, and I kept going. That was the real success. My accent didn't matter. My mistakes didn't define me. What mattered was that I could connect, understand, and be understood. Looking back, I see now that fluency is not a destination. It's a journey of transformation. It's about who you become in the process. More patient, more open, more confident. English gave me more than a skill. It gave me access to the world, to stories, to ideas, and to people I never would have met otherwise. And the best part? I'm still learning every single day, because the journey never ends. And I wouldn't want it to. Chapter 8, Reaching the Advanced Level. After many months of constant practice and real immersion, I began to notice something I had always dreamed of. I could understand nearly everything I heard in English, whether it was a complex podcast about philosophy, a news report full of technical terms, or casual conversations in fast, connected speech. I was finally following along without effort. My brain didn't freeze anymore. I could guess meanings from context, recognize idiomatic expressions, and even catch jokes and sarcasm. This was the moment when I realized that I had moved beyond the intermediate stage. I was not just surviving in English, I was thriving. Reaching an advanced level wasn't about knowing every word or using perfect grammar. It was about flexibility. I could say things in more than one way. If I forgot a word, I could explain it with others. If someone asked me a complex question, I could respond clearly and naturally. My vocabulary had depth. Instead of always saying good, I could say fantastic, brilliant, impressive, or satisfying. My grammar became intuitive. I no longer had to think about rules. I had internalized them through practice. This made my speaking sound natural, and I could feel when others responded to me with ease and comfort. To keep pushing forward, I challenged myself with new types of content. I watched documentaries, read academic articles, and listened to interviews with thought leaders. I started using English to learn other things, like psychology, science, or history. This was the moment I stopped learning English for English's sake and started using it as a tool to expand my knowledge and worldview. I also took part in more advanced conversations, joining debates in online communities, writing essays with nuanced opinions, and even giving short talks in English. These experiences were uncomfortable at first, but they stretched me and helped me grow. One thing I paid close attention to was accuracy. At the advanced level, fluency is great, but accuracy matters more. I worked on reducing fossilized errors, those small mistakes that stick with you if you're not careful. For example, I used to say people as instead of people are, or he go instead of he goes. I recorded myself speaking and listened critically. I asked native speakers for honest feedback, even if it hurt. I wanted to polish my English like a diamond, keeping it shine while correcting its rough edges. This was hard work, but also rewarding, because every correction brought me closer to excellence. By now, English was more than just a language for me. It had become a second skin. I could switch between casual and formal tone. I could adapt to different cultures and styles of communication. I started to notice how Americans speak differently from Brits, how Canadians use softer tones, how Australians use slang. These differences fascinated me. I realized that English is not just one language. It's many voices, many rhythms, many stories. And I had become part of it. That realization gave me pride, and it reminded me how far I had come. Chapter 9, Mastering Nuance and Expression. At this stage, my focus shifted to one of the most beautiful and subtle aspects of language, nuance. I didn't just want to be fluent. I wanted to be expressive, persuasive, and sensitive to tone and context. I wanted to sound more like a native speaker, not an accent, but in how I said things. I began to study how people soften their opinions, how they express disagreement without being rude, and how they use humor, sarcasm, or metaphors. These are the tools of true mastery. When your words don't just deliver a message, but carry emotion, respect, or charm. I started collecting phrases that helped me sound more natural. Instead of saying, "I don't agree," I would say, "I see your point, but I have a different perspective." Instead of saying, "You are wrong," I would say, "That's an interesting view, though I see it slightly differently." These small changes made a big impact on how others reacted to me. They respected my communication style. I was not just speaking English. I was connecting with people through it. I also learned to play with tone, using rhythm and pauses when speaking and stressing certain words to show contrast or emotion. It was like learning the music of English. Another major development was mastering storytelling. I practiced telling stories from my life. Funny ones, meaningful ones, even embarrassing ones. I learned how to set the scene, build tension, and end with a strong point. I watched TED Talks, stand-up comedian, and podcasts to study how great storytellers use their voice and vocabulary. This helped me become more engaging in conversations. People listened when I spoke. They laughed, asked questions, and remembered what I said. That felt amazing because it meant I was not just fluent. I was memorable. Of course, mastering nuance also required cultural understanding. I paid attention to how people use body language, how they joked, how they apologized or complimented. I noticed that in some cultures, directness is appreciated, while in others, politeness matters more. Understanding this helped me communicate not just in English, but with English speakers from many backgrounds. I became more adaptable, more respectful, and more aware. That awareness didn't just make me a better speaker. It made me a better listener, a better learner, and a better human being. Reaching this level of expression was one of the most satisfying parts of my journey. I no longer felt like an outsider in the English-speaking world. I felt like a full participant, able to express my thoughts with color, detail, and impact. I could inspire, persuade, joke, and empathize all through English. And I knew that this kind of mastery didn't come from luck. It came from years of practice, reflection, and passion. It came from loving the language not just studying it, and that love grew stronger every day. Chapter 10, Fluency for Life. By the 10th stage of my journey, I had come to a powerful realization. Learning English wasn't something I had finished. It was something I had embraced for life. Like any meaningful relationship, it would continue to grow, evolve, and challenge me. I didn't need to chase perfection anymore. Instead, I focused on enjoying the fluency I had earned and continuing to use English as a key part of my daily world. Whether it was watching international films, working remotely with global teams, or making friends from every continent, English had opened doors I never imagined possible. One of the biggest changes in my life was professional. Because of my fluency, I began to apply for jobs that required high-level English. I participated in interviews, gave presentations, and led meetings in English, all with confidence. I didn't just translate my ideas. I delivered them powerfully. My co-workers saw me as capable, and I felt proud knowing that English had helped me level up in my career. I also started mentoring others who were learning English, sharing my tips and encouraging them during their struggles. Helping others reminded me of how far I had come in my personal life. English gave me access to a world of culture. I read books I had only heard of before. I watched theater productions, listened to global music, and joined book clubs online. I made friendships that felt deep and honest, even though we didn't share a first language. English became the bridge between my heart and theirs. These connections made me richer, not in money, but in experience and humanity. Every conversation taught me something new. Every shared moment was proof that language, when used with care, brings people together. But perhaps the most meaningful reward was internal. I had changed. I had become someone who believed in long-term growth, who didn't give up when things were hard, who found joy in small progress and beauty in every mistake. Learning English had reshaped my character. It taught me patience, discipline, and empathy. It taught me to keep going even when the results were invisible. And that lesson stayed with me, not just in language learning, but in life. It became part of who I was. So, as I write this final chapter, I want to say something to anyone who is on this path. Fluency is not a final destination. It's a way of living. Keep using English. Keep challenging yourself. Keep falling in love with the process. Because with every word you speak, every idea you express, and every heart you touch, you are not just learning a language. You are becoming the kind of person who can learn anything,